Hello, all of you beautiful people. This week, I'm going to be talking a little bit about periods, birth control, all of that fun stuff. If you're a man, you still want to hear this because with any woman in your life, this is going to pertain to you. You kind of want to know things about them and their cycle and things like that. You don't want to just shut it out and just say it's not important because it's super, super important. So, first things first, I want to make sure that you guys are aware that I am not a doctor. I am not a physician. I cannot diagnose anyone, and I don't have that medical background. Now, I cannot be incorrect with the information that I have lived. So, that is all the information that I'm going to give you guys. I will probably tell you a little bit about maybe a video or a podcast that I've listened to that might be good advice for you guys. But I'm going to tell you guys from my own experience, my clients' experience, and things that I've actually lived because I cannot be incorrect with that information. So let's talk about it. Ladies, this is such a huge topic. I get these questions all the time. So I really want to dive into this a little bit. I'm hoping that this video is not going to be crazy long, but I think that this is so important that we actually dive in just a little bit. So I did ask on my Instagram for several questions pertaining to this topic because people have so many different questions and they're such a wide variety that I tried to choose some of the most frequently asked questions. So let's just start with this. I believe in living a low-carb ketogenic lifestyle. So that is what I'm going to be talking about. That is what everything's going to be pertaining to. And I think that it's very important to recognize that first and foremost. Now, I will be talking about a few different things, and then I will actually tell you guys a little bit about my own experience going keto with my own cycle and all the process that took me through. So I'm just going to go through some of these questions. The first one is, can low carb cause no period or an irregular period? Likely, yes. The reason this is not specifically no period. That's probably not a really great thing. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But as far as causing irregularity in your cycle, especially for someone who does have a very regular cycle, you're like, oh my gosh, I did this keto thing and it's starting to be weird and irregular and I don't understand. Very, very normal. So your sex hormones use, or I don't know the proper word, but it is adjusted by the amount of cholesterol you actually intake. And people don't talk about this a lot because they think cholesterol is so bad, but that is why having fat in your diet is actually so important. Fat in your diet can do so many different things for your hormones, for your joints, for your everything. So having that cholesterol is like a prerequisite to having healthy hormones. So keep that in mind that as you are starting a ketogenic lifestyle, if you have not had fat in your diet for a long period of time where you've been really high carb, low fat, you probably are likely going to go through some hormonal changes, and I would honestly say it's definitely for the better. So keep on going, girl. As far as not having a period and how you can kind of heal yourself from amenorrhea, I have to be honest with you guys, I have not gone through that myself for an extended period of time. When I did do my competition prep in 2018, I did lose my period, and I lost it for 3 months during the cutting period, and then it took me 3 months to get it back. So overall, I didn't have a period for like 6 or 7 months, and that was weird. It was definitely a hard time for me because I believe that having a period and being regular is very important to the female body. So It did take me a while to get that back, but when I went through my competition prep, I was low calorie, I was fasting, I was over exercising, I was doing a lot of things, I wasn't sleeping enough, I was doing a lot of things to cause that amenorrhea or without a period. And so I want you to take a look into your life and figure out, am I eating enough? So many women are not eating enough. And I like to dig that in, because if you are eating 900, 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 calories, 1,400 calories, you're not eating enough. You're not eating enough. You need to have enough food in your body. And not only food, but plenty of protein and plenty of fat. I've tried so hard to dig this into women because they're so fearful of eating more food. They want to fast all the time. They want to go without food because they think that that's going to get them to the body fat that they desire. That is the most incorrect way of looking at things. If you're doing a cut, it's okay to be at a deficit. But if you are continually over and over and over and over and over trying to diet down, trying to lose body fat, and you don't ever give your body a break, I'm not surprised that you are without a period. So give your body a break. Put it back into that super safe place and give it a rest. Give it that rest and that healing that your body deserves. So make sure that you're eating enough food in general. That's probably the biggest thing that I notice. You can choose to stop fasting for extended periods of time, and again, putting your body into that super safe place. I don't find, unless you're an athlete, that many people are over-exercising. But if you are over-exercising, then take a step back, maybe analyze why you're exercising so much, and if it's necessary, if you have a competition or a show or a race or something like that in the near future, and you're just trying to make it to that point, then make it to that point. But then again, put your body in that safe place that it needs to be, or wants to be, and desires to be. Along with the food, I wanted to point this out. A lot of people want to know, what should my protein be at? What should my fat be at? Blah, 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 blah. So many people have questions about carbs, and should I carb cycle? Should I not? Should I this? Should I that? What kind of carbs should I eat? And not enough people talk about the proteins and the fat because they're so concerned with the carbs. And a keto diet is a high-fat, moderate protein, and low-carb diet. Moderate protein is up to the individual. Robert and I talk very often about how our protein is just about the same a lot of the times, because I eat a lot more protein than Robert does. And he is a large bodybuilder. He's very lean, but my body can also handle that protein very well. My hormones, my body, everything thrives on a higher amount of protein. Now, when I say higher protein, it does not mean that I'm neglecting the fat. My fat is still always higher than my protein, even if it's just by 10 grams, even if it's just by 20 grams. My fat is always equal or greater than my protein, and I find that my energy levels, my body does really, really well with that. My joints feel much better. My hair, my skin, everything feels really good when my protein level is high and my fat is just a tiny bit higher, if not up to 80% or so higher. I think that that's so important to narrow in on those two, because people, especially women, tend to neglect the amount of protein that they're ingesting, and we need to recognize that that is a very important micro or macronutrient that I think is the base of anything that you go off of. So you need that protein, but also you need that fat to have healthy hormones. And for myself, when I am going through a period of trying to heal my hormones or get my period back or whatever, I do tend to veer more towards higher fat levels. And a lot of people will talk about carbs, carbing up, carb cycling, targeted carbs, things like that. And I want to narrow in on that just a tiny bit, because the first year that I was keto, I did try to do that, and I failed drastically. I terribly failed, and mostly because I cannot handle myself when it comes to carbohydrates. I overeat them. I binge eat. It makes me go crazy. So I have chosen for the last 3 or 4 years to just completely remove them from my diet. That does not mean that I'm not having nuts, I'm not having dairy, a couple of berries here and there, vegetables, things like that. So when I talk about a low carbohydrate diet, I'm not talking about carnivore. I'm not talking about 0 carb diets. I'm talking about between 15, 20, 30 grams of carbs a day. And for me, it's not necessary to go over that. I don't find for my hormones, my energy, anything like that, I need to go over, really for me, it's like 20 to 25. And that's just like in a maintenance period. And when I do have a cut, I do tend to go lower carb where it's more like 5 or 10 grams. And I'm talking total carbs, not net carbs. I don't do the net carb thing. So when it comes to carb cycling, I'm not the person to talk to about it. I don't find that it's beneficial for my body, and it's actually triggering a bad area in my brain that causes eating disorders, and that's not for everyone. That is not the way it is for everyone. That is the way that it is for me, and that is the reason I stay away from it. And I also do not find that I find any benefit for my body or my clients' bodies to do carb cycling, carb ups, or targeted carbs. Now, I do find a benefit when I increase their protein and the fat in myself and my clients. Having a higher amount of calories is the key. And when people are doing carb ups, it's likely that they're eating more calories within that day than they would any other day. So make sure that you're keeping an eye on the amount of food that you're having. Even if you're not a macro tracker, just start counting the calories and making sure that you're getting enough food in. So with other things, people have asked, about your blood sugar and your ketone numbers. Yes, that is a thing that happens. I can't tell you all the breakdown of the science behind why, but when you're around your period, your glucose tends to rise and your ketones tends to fall. Again, I'm not the scientific nerd that can just drive into that. I would highly recommend following or asking maybe your doctor or Dr. Jamie Seaman, who is Dr. Fit and Fabulous on Instagram, and asking those type of questions or listening to podcasts or YouTube videos to kind of dig more into that if that's a really big reason, like a really big thing that you're concerned about. I'm never concerned with it. It's just a natural thing that happens for me in my body every time I'm on my period. Another big thing is targeting your training around your workouts. This is a big question, and I think a lot of the time women take a step back and they're like, oh, I'm a woman and I should change everything because I'm not a man. And I think sometimes we try so hard to convince ourselves that we're so different, which we are. We are very different. However, there are some things that can remain the same. For me, training has always stayed consistent. I have consistently kept the same training every single week, as heavy as I can, the same sets, the same reps, all that kind of stuff. But within the last year or so, I have started changing my training to adjust around certain times in my period, or in my cycle, I'm sorry. And the part that I tend to find, just for myself, this is not for everyone, I find for myself that I have a lack of desire to train as intensely the week before my period starts. So the week before my period starts, I might take a deload week. I might choose to train with bands instead of the free weights. And I don't not work out. I just do a deload week or a lighter week or something like that because my body is going through something and it's not wanting to lift that heavy. A lot of people do train around their cycle. I don't think it's particularly necessary. I think a lot of people use that as an excuse to go lighter if they want to. For me, it's been beneficial lately. But read your own body and see if your body is needing or desiring something at a certain point of your cycle. Speaking of tracking your cycle, let's talk about birth control and things like that. This is like the last question, really. So birth control and your cycle, I had been on birth control for, I think it was like 11 years by the time I decided not to go on birth control anymore. And I was placed, this is the part where I'm going to kind of go into my own little story a little bit. I was placed on birth control because I was having terribly painful periods, and like any other girl, they just put you on birth control because, well, they don't have any other answers. I did no hormone testing. I got no scans done. They did nothing to try and figure out why they were so painful. They just put me on birth control. Now, I was on several different like actual pill birth controls. I've been on the NuvaRing. I've had an IUD. I've done all of it. Not all of it. I didn't do the shot and I didn't do the injection site in your arm. I haven't done either one of those. But I will tell you that every single one of the birth controls that I was on never did what I wanted it to do. I never felt great. I never felt wonderful. I was always in pain. I was always extra bloated. I was irritable. There was so many things that caused me to have like a mental anxieties and things like that I feel if I were not on birth control, I would never have really had. There was parts in between of changing the birth controls that I went off, and I always felt so much better, even though they were so painful. My periods were so painful, I still felt better. So I don't feel like the birth control did me any benefits. Now, I'm not going to say that all birth control is bad. I think that if your main point of being on birth control is as a contraceptive to prevent yourself from being pregnant, you have the right to do that. However, if you are on birth control for acne or painful periods or something like that, I urge you to figure out the reasoning behind why you're going through this, and if you can do anything with your diet, exercise, etc. to help those things rather than being on a birth control. I chose to get off of my IUD. That's the last one I was on almost 2 years ago, which, praise Jesus, it's been amazing. So as soon as I got off of birth control, my period my cycle it's been beautiful. I've got my hormones tested. They're beautiful. I did it like right after and then a year after, and my progesterone's where it's supposed to be, my estrogen's where it's supposed to be. Everything is beautiful and perfect, but I worked on my nutrition. I got myself off of the birth control, and I do track my cycle. A lot of people are like, Crystal, if you don't want a baby right now, what are you doing? I track my cycle with, it's a device called the Daisy. It does your basal thermometer testing. Yeah, it's just, for me, that's really, really helpful. Your temperature when you are waking up should be pretty consistent, and there's a piece when you are ovulating or around your ovulation that your natural temperature rises slightly, and so this device helps you to track that, and it connects to an app on your phone, and you can track your whole cycle. You should know when your period is, and this is if you have a regular cycle. So if you have an irregular cycle, I would maybe try and work with your nutrition and work with your doctor or physician to try to get that regular a really natural way. And then if you decide that you don't want to be on birth control or you're ready to go a more natural route, I love my Daisy. It is kind of pricey. There are some cheaper options or options where you can pay monthly. But I do love the Daisy. I love the brand. I've had great customer service with them, and it's just been a really wonderful thing for me and my relationship with Robert. It's made my mental so much better, and my whole body is just happier not having those exogenous hormones being put in my body day after day after day, and I just don't have those highs and lows like I used to have. So for me, going on a high-fat, low-carb diet with a proper amount of protein for my body has been the key in a lot of this. I don't have birth control anymore, and I don't have painful periods anymore. I did have one painful period within the last 2 years. I actually had it last month, and it was horrific. But other than that, I have not had any painful periods. Not one. I have been giving myself proper nutrition. I take care of my sleep. I take care of my stress. I take care of my body every way I know how. And before, when I was on birth control, I was continually bleeding. And not a lot of people love to hear that, but it was like I didn't ever not have a period. I was continually bleeding every single day, or the majority of the days out of every month. And that was happening because of my birth control. Immediately after I took it out, my period and my cycle went back to a beautiful, natural, normal cycle that it should be when your body is doing everything naturally and being fed properly, being trained properly. So my biggest urge for you through this time is to realize that nutrition has a lot to do with what's going on with your hormones. Fat and cholesterol have a huge play in what happens with your hormones. Eating proper whole foods is what helps a lot with your hormones. There are birth control options. There is one thing I wanted to mention about birth control. If you are choosing to take the pill, Dr. Jamie Seaman has mentioned this a lot, and it's called the other pill. And this helps you to replace a lot of those micronutrients that you actually lose when you are on the pill. And a lot of women don't realize that when they take the pill, they are at a deficit of those micronutrients. It prevents them from being able to absorb those micronutrients. So the other pill is a thing that you can take if you are choosing to do a oral birth control, that you can take with that birth control, and it will help to give you those micronutrients that your body is low on. So that is an option for you guys. But I just want you guys to take a look at all the other aspects of your life. How is your stress levels? How is your training? How is your nutrition? What are you doing? Are you eating enough protein? Are you eating enough food in general? Are you wanting to carb up because it's something that you're craving? Are you eating whole foods, or are you eating junk foods? Even keto has junk foods. I urge you to take a look at what you're doing in your day-to-day. If you guys have more questions, I'm so happy to do a follow-up video on this or answer your questions in the comments. I do have a lot more information, but this video is already starting to get long, so I'm going to log off now. But if you guys have more questions, or you want me to go dive into a couple more things or more of my story, please let me know, and I would be happy to do that. I really hope this is helpful. There are a couple of videos or podcasts or things like that that I might tag below that you guys can go listen to. There was one recently done by Rachel Gregory and Dr. Jamie Seaman and on the Metflex podcast, and I will link that one below because they talk about a lot of this stuff in layman's terms, and it's so easy to understand. It was a really easy conversation to listen to, and honestly one of the best conversations I've heard someone talk about this topic with. So I highly encourage you to go listen to that if this is an interest of an interest to you guys. But for now, I'm going to let you guys go, and I will talk to you next week.